Hello. Thank you for listening to Three Legacies Recovery Recordings. If you enjoy our program, please be sure to like and subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to share with a friend. We're also self-supporting, so feel free to contribute to the channel through Venmo at Recovery Recordings 615. Please note that the views expressed on this podcast are solely our individual views and do not represent any official stance of any 12-step program. We are not affiliated with any specific recovery organization, and this content should not be considered as professional advice for alcoholism or addiction.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Three Legacies Recovery Recording Podcast. I'm your host, Paul. Today is October 21st, 2025, and this is episode 77. I want to thank all the support we've been getting from all the listeners. You can email us at recoveryrecordings615@yahoo.com. And we also have a private Facebook page where you can get on there and send us a friend's request. We'll add you to the channel or to the page, and we always put new updates or upcoming events or whatever we got coming on for the podcast. We try to update it as much as possible. You can find us on Audible, Spotify, iHeartRadio, other major platforms, and we have a lot of cool stuff coming up this upcoming week. We got another episode with Scott L. In Nashville. We're going to do a page 112 episode where we're going to be jotting out just different lines out of the big book and what really comes to mind with them. It's based off of a meeting that Scott attends pretty often in Nashville. It's him and a buddy of ours named Barkley, and super excited about that. Super excited about tonight's guest. We have Ralph W. coming all the way from L.A. How you doing, buddy?
I am wonderful, Paul. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, buddy. Appreciate you, man. How's things in L.A.? Are you in L.A. right now?
I am. We've not slipped into the ocean, so everything's good.
Nice. Yeah. You travel quite a bit, I see, right? I know you're
Yes, sir.
You got anything coming up here soon?
I'll be leaving this Friday for a little retreat in Ormond Beach, Florida.
Nice.
Hosted by the usual suspects. Yeah, I'll be doing a weekend with a good friend of mine, Deb Helton.
Nice. Very cool. Yeah. Yeah, I have some recordings of some of those, the usual suspects in Norman Beach. Yeah. Is this your first time you're going to that retreat?
First time I'm going to that one. I've been to the actual usual suspects with Scott L., but I've not been to this one in Ormond Beach.
Yeah. There's who is it that's down there? Joe C. Yeah, Joe.
Yes.
Yeah, he's down in that area too. He's a cool guy.
Yeah, my sobriety brother.
Nice. Joe is him and Mike L. In Louisville are going to be doing a men's retreat for us coming up in January. Yeah, it's going to be cool. I've only met Joe a couple times, but yeah. Yeah.
You're in for a treat.
Yeah, I'm excited about it. Yeah, it's like our first one was last year, and it's usually like 41 guys, so it's not real big, so it's kind of intimate, pretty cool experience.
Yeah, you're in for a great treat.
Yeah, I'm excited about it. Yeah, yeah. So how's everything been rolling with you? You said you said tomorrow you're speaking at the Pacific Group. Is that correct?
No, I'm going to Specific Group. A friend of mine is speaking there from New York. So I'm going out there. He's in town. So we're going out there. He came out for a wedding we attended, a big fellowship wedding this past weekend. So Tommy T from Staten Island will be speaking at Pacific Group. And yeah.
I met Tommy this past year. Yeah. Cool. And for the listeners, we're calling this episode Emotional Displacements and Rearrangements. And that came out of the a part of the book where Rowan Hazard and Carl Jung, Rowan at the time felt like the doors had slammed shut on him and he felt hopeless. And he asked Carl Jung if there was anything, has anything ever, happened in the past where was there any hope pretty much? And he said, yeah, from time to time, there's emotional displacements and rearrangements, which for him, it's his way of describing a spiritual awakening, right? And yeah, that's kind of what came to me when I was in prayer about this. And I was listening to one of your talks earlier, and you do such a freaking great job at like just identification, like just the stuff you talk about, especially like in the early recovery. I can identify with so much. And you were talking about how trying to fit in and situations like this. So let's start right there. Let's talk about like what was it like, when you first come into the rooms, and how what's your sobriety date first off?
Well, my sobriety date is October the 11th, 1986. So almost exactly 39 years ago, I came in from Nicole. Uh, yeah, I celebrate what we on the West Coast call our sobriety birthday. And so I celebrated it uh, a week ago this past Saturday.
Well,
Uh,
congratulations.
yeah.
And things are. I'm assuming if you're like the rest of us, when you first come in the rooms, things were probably kind of you're ate up with it, huh?
Well, uh, I was 33 years old when I finally came into the rooms of recovery. And um, Clancy used to call it no friendly direction. Um, uh, our literature sometimes refers to guys like me as last gaspers. I had some things and I lost them all. And so I was 33 years old, uh, had not been anybody's 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock wake up call to go to work in so long. I didn't think I was employable. I didn't have a driver's license. I didn't have anywhere to stay. Uh, thank God I did. No place of my own. I didn't know where my family was living, didn't know where my little girl was enrolled in school. Um, and I went into a treatment facility October the 13th of 1986, which was a month following the weekend of my sobriety date. And I stayed there and I came out. And uh, if you read in our book, we have lots of places that describe, for me, I can always find myself. And so, one of the things that stands out to me, one of the stories in chapter 3 that talks about varying stages of um, that chapter, which should be titled mental states that precede a relapse in the drinking right. And so one of the relapsers was the guy Fred. And Fred had been called on by the members of Alcoholics Anonymous before he took this trip. And Fred didn't think he was alcoholic. Oh man, it's cool. And they talked to him, and Fred said, "Okay, thanks for the information." And he went off to Washington, handled his business, and went on a roaring bender. Right? He went on a run that exceeded any other run he had ever been on. And so at the end of this run, Fred, who had left his wife waiting on him at the airport, but Fred this time, instead of the AA people having to come to him, he called them. He was what we call sweetly reasonable based on his experience. So Fred calls him, right? And he said the guys came and they sat with him. Fred said they grinned at him, which Fred did not like the fact that they grinned, which is what we do in AA. But Fred said this. He said that the guys talked to him and they outlined the program of action. He called this program pretty drastic. He said, but the minute Fred said the minute that he accepted those proposals, even though he had the curious sensation that his alcohol problem was lifted, as it later proved to be. When I went into Harbor Light at 33 years old, I had I had visited the program the year before. But when I went into Harbor Light and bought the program, I'm telling you, Paul, from that day to this, my entire sobriety, I've had the curious sensation that it was lift. I've been fortunate. I've been gifted That's not everybody's story. Dr. Bob said for 5 years he battled this idea of drinking, and I, from the time I came, I've always uh, believed I'd be here.
Yeah. Wow.
For me, it felt like I've always known I would be here.
Nice. Wow. Man, I can relate to that so much. First off, I was 33 as well when I got sober, and I love that part of the book. It said that it flickered out the or the what does it say? The idea that he could do the job
Snuffed out the
himself.
last
Yeah,
flicker of hope he could do it by himself.
yeah, page 42. So Katie P and me were talking about we did a series on here, and she said her and Charlie was at listening to Bob B talk one day, and he had made the comment like he was one of the lucky ones, and she said I looked over at Charlie and I was like, what do you think he means by that? And the same thing, similar to what you were just talking about, like being one of the lucky ones, like this is my experience since the day I walked into Alcoholics Anonymous this go around. I've just always loved this thing, right? I don't know. I've been one of the lucky ones myself. I've always liked, pretty much. Yeah, I wasn't always willing. Don't get me wrong. It took me, a good 90 days before I was willing to do anything, like ask for help and stuff like that. But I've always had this sense of like, man, I really enjoy this. The meetings and the people and the love I felt in the rooms and all that, So I can definitely relate to that.
Well, yeah, it's interesting you quote my sponsor too, because he calls it a gift, and I share that same gift. My sponsor is Bob B out of St. Paul, and he talks about being gifted with uh, this instantaneous love for the program and this instantaneous feeling of welcome. That's not everybody's experience. And so when it's your experience and you don't have anything else to match it against, and you are filled with the kind of self centeredness that I am, which makes me believe that my experience is the experience. Everybody feels the way I feel. And so sometimes you get impatient when, well, how come you don't want to go to meetings? How come you won't dive into this? That's not everybody's experience, and that's a gift. But if, like any gift, when it's something that you didn't work for and you didn't earn, even though you might take credit for it, you don't realize that's not how everybody's built. That's not everybody's architecture. And so, but I've been gifted with that too. And, so when you talked about at the beginning these huge emotional displacements and rearrangements, that was another way. When Roland Hazard went to see Carl Jung, and Carl Jung gave him what Roland thought was a death sentence at the time. I can't do nothing for you. I can't. I got nothing for you, dude. And Roland is like, for those people who might be listening, what are they talking about? Well, Roland Hazard was a guy who had a serious drinking problem. Came from a successful family. People had money. And so he did what people with money do when they have a problem. They throw money at the problem. And so they threw Roland under the care of some of the best shrinks of the day, and one of the preeminent psychiatrists of the day was Carl Jung. Fortunately, Roland saw Carl Jung. He didn't see Sigmund Freud. He didn't see Adler. He saw Jung, and Jung was a psychiatrist that wasn't just full of himself. Jung was one of the few. Unlike Freud, Jung also was a proponent of a spiritual basis of living. He didn't discount that. Thank God for Carl Jung. And so Roland Hazard went to visit him, and Roland visited Young and stayed with him for about a year to treat his alcoholism. And so he was treating his alcoholism Young, and so at the end of that year he had been fully shrunk. Right, what shrinks do, what you shrink, and he had, understood the inner workings of his mind. Probably had spanked his inner child. Probably did all that stuff that you do in therapy, right?
Yeah.
And so he knew, and he claimed he fared forth, and he knew he wouldn't drink again. He's the top doctor, right? And so he goes and he leaves. He didn't even get home from Europe. He's drunk. And he goes back like I would have gone back when I spent my good money.
Yeah.
Hey, man, I thought you fixed me.
Yeah.
You need to talk to me, Young. Why am I drunk again? And Young told Roland, hey, man, I tripped. I misdiagnosed your case. I thought that you were another a guy that I could work with in these behavior modification methods, these other methods I've employed would be, but for a guy like you, and he gave him some magic words that didn't seem magic words at the time. He told him, "You have the mind of a chronic alcoholic." Really? Really? What does that mean, doctor? And the doctor told him that the mind, and this idea of chronic alcoholism, for anybody, we have acute diseases and we have chronic diseases. Acute disease, you have a cold, you get over it, you might catch it again, you get over it. You had a measles, you have them once, you get over it, you're done. You had a mumps. Chronic disease, heart disease. Got it? You got it. Diabetes, you got it? You got it. So you got it. Alcoholism, a chronic disease, and so, and he told uh, Roland Hazard, look, I can't do nothing for you. Wait a minute, doctor, nothing? Nothing. You my court of last resort. If you can't help me, I can't be helped. Is there no exceptions to this? He said, I've been trying to. I know what you need. Silkworth said the same thing later on in the doctor's opinion. We know what you need. You need some act right, get right. I've been trying to put that in you. I can't put it in you.
Yeah,
I've been trying.
yeah,
The
yeah.
methods I've employed have never been successful with people like you, right? So Roland says, wait a minute, are there no exceptions? Young says this. Yeah, there are. Here and there, every now and then, I've heard, I ain't seen it myself. I've heard about these people who've had what we call vital spiritual experiences. That's what I've been trying to put in you, but I can't do it. It's beyond human capacity to put that in a person, these vital spiritual experiences, right? And that is why he later on did what it is that you started our talk off with. He gave another description of this vital spiritual experiences. They seem to be in the, you know, uh, they seem to be these huge emotional, displacements is what he called them. And so that's another way of looking at it. Later on, it'll call it a personality change. These emotional displacements and rearrangements. We call it in Alcoholics Anonymous, the spiritual experience, the 12 steps, the vital spiritual experience. And the 12 steps are not the experience, but they are the guide and our roadmap to a relationship with this power, and so that's what we use. And uh
Yeah, which is actually what he goes into right there. If you look right after that line that you had said earlier, it was on page 42. And then he says, quite as important as the discovery that spiritual principles would solve all my problems. Right. And which is exactly what you just said. We start working the steps and applying these principles. And, that's pretty much how I get in touch with this power, right? This power that's miraculously changed my life. Right. And that's good
and
stuff.
what do you think he means by quite as important was the discovery? What do you
Um,
think that means?
good question. I'm not sure. I've never thought about that.
Well, quite as important was the discovery that spiritual experiences will solve all my problems. So quite as important. So, what's important is the spiritual experience, this relationship with this power, this roadmap you're going to give me is going to enable me to stop drinking. If your name is Ralph White, it's going to enable me to stop drinking and using because I was really caught up. But quite as important, Paul, as the fact because when I stopped drinking and using, I got a mountain of problems. I don't have a driver's license. I have a big 2-year gap in my resume. When I get in the workplace, I'm gonna have to start addressing that. I don't have a key to anybody's house that belongs to me. I've not looked at myself full face in the mirror in over 2 years. I owe the IRS $80,000. I'm on check systems because I bounced so many checks banks won't let me open a bank account. I go 3 years cashing my checks at Nick's check cashing. So I've got all these problems, and they seem to be side issues. So why would, oh my God. So now I'm gonna work on this getting sober, and then on the side, I'm gonna have to work on all these other issues. Ralph, here's the fine print, and it is the bold print, quite as important. The same process and the same power that will stop you from drinking is the same process and the same power that's going to allow you to stand up and be a grown man in your life. Same process, same power is going to give you the power to walk around and hit the trifecta: driver's license, insurance, and registration at the same time.
Yeah.
What? That's big news. Same power, same process. Going to allow you to get back in the workplace, be a productive member there, thrive, survive, succeed, grow, and have a great career. Same power, same process. That you were a deadbeat, that 2 year is going to enable you to be uh, I mean, not only a great dad, but a granddad and a mate and a son and a brother and all those things. And it's not going to have to be 2 or 3 or 4 separate deals. We're not going to work on drinking here and then send you out. No, quite as important. You mean the same? Yes. In fact, what we're going to say to you, sir, you don't expect. We're going to say, when you work on this spiritual deal, with new information. Didn't think that. The mental stuff you got going on, can't sleep at night, can't stop beating yourself up, your mind is racing, can't trust yourself, cannot be trusted, irresponsible, immature, all that, the mental and the physical. 30 pounds underweight, size 20 something when you can, all that will straighten out. What? Are you really serious with me right now? Why is it important? Oh,
Wow.
so that, yes, yes, huge,
Yeah.
good news.
Yeah.
It is, in fact, the best news. I thought I came for my drinking, did not know. My friend Don L. out of Washington says I didn't see it coming. I didn't know what was really on offer in Alcoholics Anonymous.
Yeah. Wow.
What's really on offer is a way of life. We don't talk about it as much these days, but our book describes it as a design for living. And old times used to call it the AA way of life, a manner of living, you know.
Wow.
And so that's what's on offer.
It's funny because when I first come around, there was a guy that used to in my home group that used to say, when I got here, I was so sick, you had to trick me into feeling better. Like the stuff I was running after in life was horrible for me. You know what I mean? And like I did not want to do any of this stuff. First off, that was just like I enjoyed AA, but when it come down, like I got this, don't worry about it. I got this, I got it. Even though I had like evidence after evidence after evidence of like what happens when I run my life, right? And I was still just so insane that thought I had it, right? Man, I love that. I love that. So how about like so when you first come in the rooms, like, did you get a sponsor and stuff right after you got out of treatment? How'd that work? You get one in treatment? How'd that work? What did it look like when you first came out?
No, I did not. I was in treatment for 120 days. I went to a halfway house and I started going to meetings from the treatment facility. I was in a facility, thank God, that knew they were not Alcoholics Anonymous, but they took us to Alcoholics Anonymous, and we had AA meetings. Outsiders came in and they were actual AA meetings in the facility twice a week. And so they took us, so I was already introduced. So I was already going to meetings and had a home group, 9604 South Figueroa in LA and the Crenshaw Alano Club. I had two groups that I regularly attended. And then uh, I also attended meetings every night of the week, either at my home or somewhere else, every night of the week. For at least 3 years, I went to a meeting every single day. But in getting a sponsor, I'm blessed and I'm fortunate and I've been gifted. I'm not gifted. I've been gifted with some things that happen. I guess I was tenderized well enough that when I got here, I didn't do a lot of balking, and I was dropped into a hotbed of recovery, and so uh, I'm not a person that didn't. The book has been on every table of every meeting I went to in my early recovery. So I don't come from a place where the book wasn't emphasized and the steps weren't emphasized. I was around and they were talking about a sponsor, but I was full of fear. I was full of still two overriding fears that have dominated me most of my life. What I think you think about me. And if you really know me, you won't like me. And I'm sitting here trying to get a. This is a strange new world, this world of Alcoholics Anonymous. I don't know something for nothing. I don't know altruistic movement. I don't know. I know places I come from where people have status and it's tit for tat, quid pro quo. And so this guy, I wanted to get a sponsor and I was at a meeting and I was sitting at the meeting. I'm about 70 days sober and I'm at the Crenshaw Alano in the middle of the night. At night. It's a speaker meeting and a guy was leading the meeting and he had about 10 years, seemed like an old timer to me, and he had big respect. His name was Bob H. He had a prosthetic leg and he was a big man, and when he spoke everybody listened, and oh my god, he didn't know me but I knew him, and he was leading the meeting, and it was a break that night, and I was in my seat, and he came to me at the break and he said, "What's your name?" And I told him my name. And he went back and continued, and the meeting went on. And at the end of the meeting, uh, he said, after a moment of silence for the alcoholic who still suffers, he said, "I want my new friend, Ralph, to lead us in a prayer." And somebody knew my name of that stature because I was putting, and so I started following him, and he let me hang out with him. I would be in his car. He had a friend, Latie, and they tell stories about being in the nut house, and I'd sit in the back seat and listen, and
Yeah.
I did, but I didn't have what it take to ask him to sponsor me because I couldn't take a rejection. I just couldn't take it. And what would he want to have to do with me? I don't have anything. I'm staying at my mom's house. I don't have a job yet. I don't have, I'm not aware and I'm not familiar yet with this house, Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm not familiar with for fun and for free. I'm not familiar with the hand of AA reaching out whenever anybody reaches out for help. I'm not familiar. And I, so one day we're riding in the car, and I know I want him to sponsor me, but I'm scared to ask. So I say, when we're riding, ah, I consider you my sponsor, right? I'm not asking it on this.
Scared to death.
And he
Yeah.
smiled, and looked at me like old time, like they do. And he said, "That's all right, bro. We can do it." And that's how I got my first sponsor,
Nice.
Bob.
Wow.
And then I stayed with him for about 15 years
Wow.
and then had a little hiatus. And then I got with my current sponsor, Bob B.
Uh,
And I've been with him ever
how
since.
so? How long's Bob been your sponsor? How long
Oh,
currently?
gosh. I'm 39. And Bob, I think I was 17 or 18. So
Wow.
now it's been
Wow.
over 20
Man,
years.
cool. That's awesome. Wow. Yeah, I've met Bob. He came to my home group a couple years ago during the when they were in Nashville doing the Usual Suspects. Yeah. Which and what you're saying actually kind of goes into the next part of what it says right there in my experience. Anyways, it says ideas, emotions, and attitudes, which was once the guiding forces of our lives, how these men suddenly cast to one side and completely new set of conceptions and motives began to dominate them. And my experience is like it wasn't until I started getting hope outside of me actually was when my sponsor, you know, it's finally someone that I started trusting, and I realized like this man had something I want, and which was a new concept really. Like I was so used to just hold this, I got this, I got this, I got this. And it wasn't until I met my first sponsor and the relationship I formed with him where like, you know, there's new concepts of like, maybe I need some help, you know, like this guy has something I want, which was brand new for me at that time. I was 33, you know. What was your experience like with that?
Um, when you talk about attitude suddenly cast aside, that's isn't that an interesting word when you think about it?
Yeah, it kind of throws me off
Suddenly
sometimes.
cast
Yeah,
aside.
yeah.
Yeah. A- And say that sentence again.
Yeah, hold on one second. It
Read
says,
it again.
yeah, okay. It says ideas, emotions, and attitudes which were once the guiding force of our lives of these men
Or suddenly
are
cast
suddenly
aside.
cast to one side, and a completely new set of conceptions, motives, and begin to dominate them.
Like what kind of ideas and emotions and attitudes did you have before?
Yeah, well, for me, it was like, I got this. I don't need any help. Trust me, I got this. I just need to quit drinking and, you know, doing all the other stuff I'd been doing, and you know, I could start saving some money. I pretty much it was me. I had this, right. I thought I could do it, you know.
Right.
Um, and then like it wasn't until like it was about 90 days in where like self will had just drove me, you know, into some situations where it was just unbearable. Like I wasn't putting alcohol in me or chemicals in me anymore, so it was just unbearable. I was still doing all the same stuff I'd been doing, you know, and you know, when I'm not putting something in me to sedate my feelings, it's, you know, when I'm still doing all the same old BS, you know, like man, it's a completely different experience, you know, you
So
know.
when you look back, what is a something that you can point to? You said how you used to be. I got this. What is it there? Were there some things you could point to when you look back? When you're in it, you probably can't see it. When you look back, were there some telltale? Was there some evidence of that statement?
I'm not really I'm not sure what you're saying, really, honey. Um,
Okay, so the statement is ideas and attitudes and emotions that used to be the driving force are suddenly cast aside.
yeah, there's a couple things. Like first off, I finally actually was willing to actually ask for help. You know what I mean?
Okay.
That was a big one, and then also through like a conversation through I started calling my sponsor on a pretty regular basis, right? And through conversations with him and the experiences I was having in my personal life, I started seeing how like man, a lot of the stuff I'm doing in my life is causing me problems, right? And which was a brand new, like, you know, up until, you know, till I got sober, I was pretty convinced. I was so delusional. I thought all my problems was like, oh, it's the government's fault that I'm doing all this stuff. You know, they should legalize drugs, and you know, I was just so
Mm-hmm.
delusional. You get what I mean? And but you know, through conversations with him, I started seeing like I got a whole lot of old ideas that are standing in my freaking way and causing a lot of
Mm-hmm.
problems in my life, you know. And which was also another new ideas for me, because I wasn't aware of the fact that, you know, old ideas I had about God or family or all this stuff, you know. Does that make sense?
Makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
These old ideas and attitudes that are cast to one side, they look different. They look different on me at different times in my life, and they look different on people. And I think, particularly when I'm sponsoring, and so I always stay mindful of my blind spots in sponsorship.
Mm.
I'm always aware of what. So sometimes I will think that these old ideas that I have to let go of, wait a minute, dude, you're still holding on to, oh, they go slow. But one of the first evidences that I'm getting, and when you say suddenly cast aside, a person that comes in, yeah, I'm a grown man, can't tell me all of a sudden ask for a sponsor. That's huge.
Yeah.
That is old ideas and emotions suddenly
Yeah.
cast it aside.
Sure. Yeah.
Uh, I'm going to meet. I'm not going to these places. I don't want to go anywhere where people are not drinking and partying.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, I'm going to meetings every suddenly cast aside. Don't even realize it. Suddenly cast aside, you know. So now I start calling and asking for help. I don't need no, you don't. And now I start sharing at meetings. And before, my motto is don't tell your business. You don't ever let anybody know. You don't let anybody see you sweat. You don't let them. And now I'm at a podium and I'm sharing. I'm scared. I don't know if I can stay sober. People don't realize that's suddenly cast aside, showing, because the fear for a lot of guys and women, but full of testosterone, it's not so much the fear, it's the fear of letting anybody see that I'm scared.
Yeah.
And so I'm terrified of you finding out that I'm scared. But then to stand up at a meeting and the way that that happens, we don't realize it, which is one of the big benefits of going to meetings, is I see other people modeling it. And it was a big guy in my home group, Dennis L. He's passed. Dennis was 6'6", big guy, big brother, and he was out of the penitentiary. And one night, Dennis was sharing, and he shared so openly and so transparently. I said, "What? This guy right here is saying that?" And people clapped, and people seem to approve of when you show what I used to think of, that's showing weakness. And so these old ideas are suddenly cast aside, and we do it for each other. We don't know we do it for each other. We don't know we're uh, sowing the seeds for somebody else, and making that ground fertile for them to step out and feel safe, and I don't know it. And so these are like when you say suddenly, because it might not feel like it was sudden. You were mentioning it took me 90 days. Well, something happened suddenly
It's true.
that made you even be going to meetings for up to 90 days.
Absolutely. I agree.
What am I
Absolutely.
doing? What? I'm going to these, I'm with these squares. Because I did not go anywhere. That's one of the first old ideas. I didn't used to go anywhere where they're not getting loaded. No.
Yeah. I was interested. That was the thing. It was like that right there's a new suddenly, right? Because like me and my first sponsor used to always say like, "What is it this time?" Like I'd been to AA a handful of times in the past. I'd spent a few months in some meetings or whatever. I've been to the fellowship side and but like all of a sudden this time, something's been different, right? It's like all of a sudden like I'm interested for some reason, right?
What do you think that is?
Yeah, I mean, that's a miraculous power greater than me. I mean, yeah, spiritual
And what
awakening.
was your participation in that?
Yeah, I was absolutely zero. I mean, like I have no, it's a, what do they call it? Act of providence, right?
And what enables that to happen?
I mean, it's the grace of God.
What is the one common ingredient that allows that? Because grace is grace. Grace is always available.
Yeah, good question.
Grace is always available. When
Yeah,
I was relapsing, grace was available. So why on October the 11th, 86, I was collapsed. I was
yeah,
surrendered.
wow,
I was done. Grace is available. The grace is always available. It's me that. So what is it I that has happened this time? Because can't create the grace. I don't produce the grace. I don't control the grace. I can't predict the grace, but I access it. So what is it that was different with October the 11th, 86 as opposed to August 85 when I first got and didn't stay, even though some was available then? you know, uh, the grace is available, the receiver is blocked. The grace is always there. So my job is not to create the grace. My job, I think, is I wipe the window.
nice.
But the window is so smudged, and so I wipe the window. And then as the window gets cleaner, grace comes in.
Yeah,
And at first, it's just a sliver. And I didn't have to do the wipe. I'm collapsed. I'm collapsed. And when you collapse, there's nothing blocking. There's room for grace can just flow all the way through. I'm collapsed. Ain't no blocking. There is no blockage. There is no resistance. There is no. I'm and I, Paul. I don't surrender myself. I was surrendered,
wow.
and
Yeah,
that's what I think you're talking about when you say act of providence. Didn't have anything. Yeah, that's another. That's one of my favorite words for God. Something happened.
oh yeah, something happened. Amen. Yeah. It's funny. I was listening to one of your talks a couple of days ago, and I think I'm probably going to botch this, but you said something along the lines of when desperation meets opportunity, right?
A window of grace opens up,
Yeah. It's like, wow. Which is funny
and I
because
jumped through the window.
that was my experience. So I was 33 years old. I just got caught with a bunch of narcotics, and I was fixing to go to prison the rest of my life. I did not want to get sober. At least I thought. I had no clue what sobriety was, but the ideas I had of sobriety did not match what I was trying to aim at. And I remember I just got out of jail, and I was desperate, and I called the recovery house that I was thinking about moving into, and I was about to move in, and I'd called my brother, and my brother had he made a comment one day, and I was desperate. I'm in tears, in tears, and he said, how about you look at this like an opportunity? And I remember for the first time, that was literally the first time, and at that point it had been years, where all of a sudden something happened. I had this little shift that happened
Hmm.
where I was like, holy crap, like I never thought about that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So when I heard you say that comment, it was like, wow, that's my experience. I remember I was on my mom's front porch when I heard him say that. It's crazy. It's good stuff. Yeah. Yeah, it's one of those things where I say quite often the power greater than me has separated me from alcohol. My last sponsor, he just passed away 6 months ago from cancer. He used to say, he said, Paul, I was the guy that I'd come into the meetings drunk for years, telling everybody they were full of crap, right? He was like, his sobriety date was March 17th. And he said, March 15th, I was at a meeting cussing everybody out. March 16th, I was at a meeting drunk, full of crap. March 17th, I woke up and something had changed. It was an act of providence is when he would share that. It's like, wow.
Hmm.
Yeah.
That is interesting. That to me is the amazingness of this deal. One day I'm in the life, next day, no fanfare, no warning, no reservation, no one day looks just like every other day. The next day, I'm walking out the life, in the life. That is amazing to me.
Yeah.
Bill Wilson in his story, I love it because Clint Hodges used to share a story that was similar. And I heard him share it, and I was like, wow, that's me. Bill in his story, he shared about his white light experience. And for anybody who's not aware of that, in December 1934, Bill Wilson was in Towns Hospital for the third time that year of 1934. And he had been visited by his friend Ebby Thatcher the month before. And Ebby had disturbed Bill on the subject of this God idea. Bill had been thinking about it because Ebby Thatcher showed up sober, and Bill and him had a lot of drinking experiences. Surprised Bill, interested Bill, Bill's still drinking. So a month later, Bill finds himself in Towns Hospital. Some stuff happened that made him ripe for an experience. When he walked in the hospital this time, the doctor, William Silkworth, told his wife, get a black dress. Dude is likely not to come out of here. If he does, he's probably going to have to be locked up for the rest of his life, or he's going to have to either be in a nut house, have a wet brain, have to be under lock and key, or he's going to be dead. So get ready, Lois. So Bill heard that sobering news, and it kind of shook him. So he's in the hospital, and he's in his bed this particular night, and he's thinking about what his friend had been talking about to him, and coupled with this death sentence that Silkworth had told his wife, and he says, okay, God, if you here, show yourself to me. And he later recounted that story that a wind blew through, light came on. He called it later his white light experience. And later, when recounting that experience, he said, God comes to most men gradually, but his impact on me was sudden and profound. And I was always for years saying, I get it. He came to me gradually. He came to me, and I heard Clint Hodges share in a way, and I said, wow, that's me. I started drinking and smoking weed when I was 18 years old in 1971. going off to college. I never stopped. I never went to the penitentiary. I never had any enforced abstinence. So from 1971 to October 10th, 1986, would not, could not put it down. Never stopped. Something happened on October 11th, 1986,
Yeah.
and I haven't picked it up.
Yeah.
One day for for 1971 to 1986, couldn't put it down.
Yeah.
One day later, have not picked it up. God's impact on me was sudden and profound.
Yeah.
I just didn't know it at the time
Yeah.
because He came to me gradually. And I think about that. And for most of us, almost all of us, because we don't know. We don't know that's going to be our day. We don't know till looking back that we've decided we're going to be on this path. But sudden and profound.
Yeah. Man. Man, I can relate so much to that. Wow. And I remember I was probably 4 or 5 years sober when I finally started seeing what we're talking about, right? Like I was like, wow, I don't think I had anything to do with this, right? And I'll tell you what's really happened was that after sponsoring guys over the years, I've seen situations where like guys were like knee deep in the work, and certain situations where it was like a flip of a switch, like where it was, one guy particularly had some mental health stuff going on, and it's like a flip of a switch where like all of a sudden like they completely changed, right? Um, I've seen that twice. I've seen another sponsor of mine that's actually currently in jail. That the same thing. He was like knee deep in doing the work, and then like one day it was kind of got drifted away, and then like he's now we just happened. He tried to come back and try to come back and try to come back, and it just wasn't possible for him so far. And but I'll tell you, like when I have experiences like that, and I realize like man, it's this something's happened, right? Like what we're saying. I tell you, like having those experiences with those guys and realizing that it's something a power greater than me that separated me from all this from this alcohol is little situations where like I can be something as simple as like walking into a store sometimes, right? And I'm glancing over at a beer cooler or something, right? And I realized like instead of trying to like entertain, which I hadn't entertained the thought of drinking in years, but like sometimes I'll immediately just go into prayer because I realize like wow, like I'm just grateful that that's not a part of my life today, right? Does that make sense?
Hmm.
Like I realize it could be the flip of a switch that I've seen it happen. The flip of a switch, people just completely change, and does that make sense?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Especially because I am putting my eye on spiritual growth and development, and I'm looking at it with my eyes. I see, when you talked about that, and I look a little differently now. I think that something happened overnight, and all the other stuff was, they were just BS and all that time. And it dawns on me, no, that was the road they took to get to what looked like suddenly. They wouldn't have got there without all those experiences. I wouldn't be where I am without my relapse. I relapsed in 1985 on my day 89, getting ready to get to 90 days. And I was at a club with a girl, and she was drinking a Long Island iced tea, and she was dancing with somebody on the floor. And she left the Long Island on the table with me. Good friend of mine, not a romantic date, but she was a good friend, happy that I was getting sober. So we went out, and at the time, when we talked about no lurking notions or reservations, you don't always know when you have them. You might think, oh, if my mama die, I'm gonna drink. You know that's a reservation, but you don't know you got lurking notions. I had this lurking notion that maybe I was not a real alcoholic because I had a real bad bout with cocaine. I had, really serious with, and so when I drank that Long Island iced tea, I sipped it, then I drank it, then I left, and then I spent all my money. Then I was out 11 months. And without that experience, I wouldn't have this experience.
yeah. Wow, interesting.
And so I could misjudge that experience and say, oh, you were full of it, you were BS and that. No, you weren't. No, I wasn't. And I believe everybody's journey. Here's my question to you, Paul. What if it's all God?
Yeah,
Now, everybody would say in AA, oh, we know it is. Really? I don't believe it.
yeah, yeah,
I believe much of it is me. I believe much of it is how well I write inventory. I believe much of it is how many people I sponsor. I
Yeah.
believe much of it is how well I can get up and share from the. No, what if it's all God? The reason I know that I believe that about me is because I judge other people's journey. And I say, oh, they're not putting in work. I don't, okay. What if it's all God? Every drop, every experience, every death, and I got to die to self before I can even want this way of life. So when I see people, now it's not comfortable when you see it, and then it's not, oh man, look at him. He fully, look, okay. He's finishing his journey. And it looks like sudden. Well, it looked like it was sudden for me when I came back. Well, that 11 months out there was all part of this journey.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it looks like this journey started from the day I came. No, this journey started with all the demoralization that was out there. It, it bore fruit in this journey. So when it's guys that's doing all the things, seeming to be hard headed, seeming to not follow sponsor, direction, or seeming not to be accountable, or seeming to be doing things their own way. Well, the reason that most of us do things another way is that I had to come to realize, the hopelessness and futility of doing it my way.
Yeah.
That to be done.
Yeah.
And the only way that's going to happen is doing it my way.
Yeah. Yeah. It's true. Yeah. When the pain gets great enough, right?
Well, I heard somebody say the only way I learn is pain. And I thought about that. And that is not the only way I learn. I learn several ways. Pain is pain is how I remember. Pain is definitely how I remember. But I learned because I think about what are the things I know and what are the things I've learned. And one way I learned is interest. I learned how to get loaded. And it wasn't from a lot of pain that did that. I learned it from a lot of practice
Uh,
and a lot of interest. I'm interested and
yeah.
I practiced. That's a way of learning, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I practice.
Yeah.
You know,
That
that's
wasn't
why I know.
in the beginning. That wasn't my experience. It's today. But in the beginning, like I was not willing, or like not even thought I
Well,
never
that's
even.
because you're limiting it to in recovery. We're
Yeah.
talking about learning.
Yeah. Yeah. Gotcha.
We're talking about learning. How did you learn how to get loaded so well?
Yeah.
Practice,
Yeah.
right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And how did I learn baseball, which was my favorite sport?
Mm.
Practice,
Yeah.
practice,
Yeah.
practice. How did I learn to play the baritone horn? Practice, practice. From the very beginning, practice. I wasn't good at the beginning, and that helped me in recovery. I wasn't always good, and so, but when you're growing and developing as opposed to learning, see, learning is thing, but what about developing? Well, that's like going to the gym, and so you could go to the gym, but if you don't work out, you're learning how to lift weights, but if you ain't lifting weights, you ain't developing, right? So, so learning and develop and practicing are two different things. And practice is the most important. I can learn the book, and I can get deceived in the thinking because I've learned the steps that I've practiced
Yeah.
the principles,
Yeah.
and I've learned them. I've learned how to read chapter 5. I've learned how to write the columns in inventory. I've learned, but I haven't practiced. Even if I've learned how to write inventory, have I practiced the humility? Have I practiced the compassion that's in the prayer? You know, um, uh, save me from being angry. Let me see. Let me show them the same pity, patience, and tolerance. I would glad. Okay, so I could have learned it, but I
Yeah.
ain't practiced
That
it.
took some time.
I've
Yeah.
not practiced the
Yeah.
compassion.
Hmm.
I've not practiced the humility. I've learned how to write a sex inventory, and I've learned, but I have not developed a sane and sound ideal that I've tried to pray and live up to.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. That all that took some time. It's like I had to get to the end of like I had to get so exhausted with just being me. Right? I was like, man, it's like the stuff I'm doing
There are
is
two ways,
yeah,
yeah,
you know,
and 6 and 7 especially. But
yeah,
there are two things, Paul, and that's the trap door and sponsoring too, because I don't think everybody's experience has to be mine. One
interesting.
of them is I have to be so exhausted about being me, but the other one is I have to be so inspired.
Mm, nice. It's the other way of looking at it.
So inspired.
Mm,
And there are some people that come, and there are other people that light that fire and fruit and say, I'm inspired. I wasn't sick and tired when I did inventory or when I did 8 and 9. I was inspired.
nice. Yeah.
Now, 6 and 7, a lot of times with my defects, yeah, I have to be tired. But in 4, I was inspired. I was lit up. And that's why it's a good thing, but not everybody. And so if I'm the person that say, like you say you are, I'll start thinking that is the way for everybody. No, it's not. But and if I'm the way I am, I'll start thinking, oh, everybody. No, some people have to really get sick and die and be patient with them. Be patient,
Nice.
you know.
Yeah.
Right? Haven't that
Absolutely.
been your experience? There are
Absolutely.
some people that you get inspired and you say, wait a minute, I'm 33. There's no hope for me ever having a key to anybody's house.
Mm,
There's no hope for me ever being welcome in anybody's life. And then you hear somebody in the rooms and they say, I was that way. And they make it look attractive and they make it more than look attractive, they make it look available. Sometimes people can make it seem like this is what we have to do, but it seems hard. It seems out of reach. It seems like, ooh, that's why if this spiritual life, there are a couple of hallmarks of a person with a true spiritual experience for me of the variety that I'm seeking. Number one, they had ability to laugh at themselves.
nice.
If you're overly serious, sticking your finger in my face, that's not attractive to me. Other people can find it, but it's not my variety. They have the ability to laugh at themselves. And the second hallmark of true spiritual experience, to me, you got to tell somebody. You can't help it. You can't help it. You share about it, and you don't talk down to people, and you don't try to. That's not what I'm talking about. The teaching and preaching. That's not what I'm talking about. But there are folk in this program who've inspired me, who've made me want to do a 4th step, who made me want to do an 8th step. I hear some people who share the value of. They make me want to be grown. And they say when you do this 9th step, it separates the men from the boys. I want to be separate. When 6, 7, 8, 9, I want to be separate. I want to be a big boy. I want to be a grown man. I want that. I want that. So sometimes growth, and in 12 and 12 talks about pain is the touchstone for spiritual growth. So often that's it. That is one of the benefits of pain. So that's what I think. So I always read the book in context. So that is why God is God and grace is grace. And there's benefit and there's goal in everything. So the way everything is this, if there's to be pain, guess what? There's benefit to it. But
Nice.
that's not always what has to motivate you. That's not the only impetus. That's
Yeah.
why we have all these promises we have at the end of each one of our steps.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the light.
Charlie P did that for me. I remember yeah, something about the man. Like I'd listened to other speakers and met people over the years or whatever that, I could relate to and I could identify with, but there was something about that man that like every time he would share, I was like, dude, I need to get my big book. Right? Like, at that particular time in my life, this is how it felt. And it was inspiring. Well, thank you so much, man. This has been awesome, and man, I really enjoyed just your take on everything you've shared with us. And I'd like to maybe at the beginning of the year set another date with you, and maybe go through some other stuff with you if you're interested.
Oh, okay. I guess I didn't soil my pants so bad that you'll invite me back. So,
Nah, this has been freaking awesome, dude. Yeah, I appreciate it so much. Yeah,
thank you for the invite, sir.
yeah.
It's been a pleasure.
Likewise, man. Likewise, and um, yeah, I'll stay in touch with you, and I'll send you some other dates, and let's do
Let's do it again. I appreciate what you do.
yeah. Thank you so much, sir.
All right. I see you. Thank you.
Have a wonderful night.
All right.
See you.
Hello. Thank you for listening to 3 Legacies Recovery Recordings. If you enjoy our program, please be sure to like and subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to share with a friend. We're also self-supporting, so feel free to contribute to the channel through Venmo at Recovery Recordings 615. Please note that the views expressed on this podcast are solely our individual views and do not represent any official stance of any 12-step program. We are not affiliated with any specific recovery organization, and this content should not be considered as professional advice for alcoholism or addiction.